I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for being with us. And starting the beginning of your week with us here, the end of your week. Really starting the beginning of your weekend is what I should say. Friday is here with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We can't do this show without you. Listening every single day. So we're back in our home studio today. We've been down at Little Rock, I guess, for the last 3 days or so. Did 2 broadcasts down there. And so we really did, there was what seemed to be kind of a lot of stuff going on, but a lot of stuff that's unrelated. So we have the biggest news of the week, which was the governor's tax cut plan. He announced on Wednesday that the tax cut was going to be a standalone income tax cut plan, income tax bill, which is really, really good news. And I think that really, should encourage all of us, who want less taxes, more limited government, to finish strong, to continue going, because I feel like this is a real victory just for everybody, for team conservative, you know what I mean? And so I'm excited to see what happens moving forward. Look, I still know I've had some people said, Paul, you're being too positive. Look, I still know that, there are potential tax increases out there, but I'm encouraged because I want to debate those ideas individually, not in, some, one bill that has all kinds of different issues in it. I think it makes it easier for people to vote yay or nay on something when it's one issue and not a bunch of other issues. And that goes with really anything. So I think that's a positive thing moving forward. And, it'll be interesting to see the scorecard, the Conduit scorecard next week. We'll be talking on Tuesday with Mr. Josh Waters again and going over some of the new bills that'll be on that scorecard. So excited about that. By the way, did I tell you? And I also mentioned that it's Johnny Cash Friday because it is Johnny Cash Friday, and that means something or other. Joe, yeah, there it is. I know. It's crazy. For those of you who don't know, Johnny Cash Friday is a day where we listen to as much Johnny Cash music as we can. We're peppering in the news and events of the day. We so rarely use this particular pod in here where the music comes from on my side anymore because we have so much. Yeah. Anyway, the phone number, 870-275-9799, if you want to contribute. You can call or text. You can also sign off over at Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News. I'm going to get to some developments yesterday in Arkansas a little later in the program, but good grief. Have you guys been paying attention at all to what President Trump's been going through, had to deal with? Yeah. It's the fake news media, but specifically it's on this thing that liberals have been wanting for decades, which is no wars, no endless wars. You know what I mean? Especially the liberal media. They used to support the anti-war cause, Nothing says more. Nothing says that you're anti-war or you're for de-escalating a situation than attempting to bring your troops home. And of course, President Trump. I'm telling you right now, I have what President Trump is doing by announcing before Christmas that we're pulling out of Syria and we potentially might pull out of Afghanistan. I couldn't believe he did it. I really couldn't believe he announced it because it's unlike any Republican president or Democrat president. That's just one of the things that it seems like both parties have agreed on for a while is that foreign entanglements are a good thing. Endless wars are a good thing. A war that is now 17 years long is totally fine. No big deal. Now, I have been saying, I am no foreign policy expert, obviously, but I have always had a problem understanding why our foreign policy in this country is not to surveil terrorist countries, and if we see them do something we don't like, we bomb them back to the Stone Age, and then we go home. Like, to me, I know we've got the greatest military in the world, but we've got the greatest air support, Air Force in the world as well. And I've just always wondered why that's not your, foreign policy. That, to me, seems to be what President Trump's foreign policy is, or a foreign policy he's trying to implement, is something along those lines. But that didn't stop your more traditional Republicans, because they have, the headlines everywhere. Senate rebukes Trump. Senate rebukes Trump. I mean, it's all over the place. Here's this first one from Breitbart. Senate rebukes Trump and his troop withdrawal from Syria and Afghanistan. The Republican-controlled Senate on Thursday voted in favor of advancing an amendment from Mitch McConnell to rebuke President Trump's decision to withdraw troops from Syria and Afghanistan. The Senate voted 68-23. There were 9 senators who didn't vote to cut off debate on the amendment. The only Republican senators, I think, that voted against it, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, one other I can't remember right now. I don't think Rand Paul actually even voted. I think he's one of the 9 that didn't vote. Support for the amendment showed a deep divide between hawkish Republicans in the Senate and the president, who campaigned on a non-interventionist foreign policy platform. Of course, Marco Rubio really taking the lead here. Now, you have to understand the context of this. You remember what happened earlier in the week? We didn't cover this at all. But you had the director of the FBI, the director of the CIA, the director of national intelligence, and they testified before Congress. And they were asked questions and were giving reports on whether or not ISIS is a threat. Now, they responded that ISIS is a threat. And they then we get all of these headlines, and we get CNN in particular presenting headlines that the intelligence community disagrees with the president disagrees with the intelligence community, but it was all in how you frame what it was these intelligence officials were saying, number one, and number two, no one is going to sit here and say, I'm sure that you're going to say, well, President Trump doesn't believe ISIS is a threat anymore. That's not true at all. President Trump has been bragging about the demolition of ISIS in terms of land they control, not in terms of the fact that there still are people who affiliate with ISIS and might attack Americans or might try to plot some terrorist attack somewhere. On the same night that the news broke that the intelligence officials undermined Trump or exposed Trump as, peddling information that's not correct, on that same night I saw a Fox News report from a reporter over in the Middle East who is in the last little small tiny village that is ISIS controlled. I mean, they went from controlling massive amounts of land, and they've been driven out of all. They don't control any of that anymore. And that is by the way, that was the objective that the military was given by the president, which is why the president, when he goes out and brags about what he has done to decimate ISIS, what the military has done to decimate ISIS, he is referring to the fact that they used to control land and territory, and now they are at one little tiny village, little bitty tiny village. And so when these intelligence officials go before the Congress and they're asked things like, is ISIS still a threat? And they have all this. Yeah, they're still a threat. It's apples and orange. It's an apples and oranges comparison, right? And so CNN and these other fake news outlets are just chomping at the bit to say, listen, you know, the president is once again not listening to intelligence agencies. You know, when the president disagreed with the 17 intelligence agencies when they talked about how much Russia was a threat during the campaign and everything else, right? Does anybody doubt that if Hillary Clinton had won, we would be in war? We would be at war in Syria right now? Does anyone doubt that? That we would be fighting some sort of proxy war in Syria against Russia? Lo and behold, Trump wins, pulls out of Syria, is not as much of a hawk in Syria. Oh, and it's just a coincidence that the deep state and the media want you to think, well, it must be because he's a Russian agent. He must be because he's working for the KGB. It's all just a little too convenient. If you actually understand the fact that we would be in war, we would be at war in Syria right now if Hillary Clinton were president, period. There is no doubt in my mind we would be at war. Why do I keep saying in war? Sorry. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. So we have another article here. Well, hang on. Let's stick with, do we have any quotes from Rubio here? Hang on one second. So there's supposed to be a big announcement during the State of the Union on Tuesday about this situation, according to Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State. Pompeo also sought to allay concerns the U.S. would take its eyes off terrorists. See, that's a whole other thing. It's such a false premise. Just because you want to pull troops out of Syria or pull troops out of the Middle East, that doesn't mean that you're no longer taking it a threat or is a serious threat. Folks, we have been doing the same thing over there for 17 years, and where's the victory? What are the results? I mean, are we really going to say, no, we just have to have this perpetual war or this perpetual presence when we have this superior air power? Tell me, I mean, obviously there's people out there that have different opinions, and I respect those opinions. But anyway, there's supposed to be some kind of, obviously the president's going to address this on Tuesday in his State of the Union address. Do we have the Hill.com? Let's see here. The Hill.com. Rand Paul calls it ludicrous. He calls this little amendment they voted on ludicrous because Leader Mitch McConnell says that to withdraw from Afghanistan and to withdraw from Syria is, quote, precipitous. Now, if you go look up a definition of precipitous, just so you know, it means sudden, okay? So Rand Paul's point is this, quote, to call it a precipitous withdrawal after 17 years is ludicrous. We've been there 17 years. Now, I will say this, Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, by the way, he just won $500,000 in a lawsuit against that guy that broke his ribs, his neighbor, because of leaves or grass clippings. Do you know this? The judge sending a strong message. This guy has to pay Rand Paul $300-something thousand for the act itself and $200,000 for pain and suffering, and additional $8,000 for his hospital bills. So he's getting $500,000 because I just thought you guys should know that. I found that hilarious because this guy was a big lefty, probably just hated Rand Paul because he, wakes up every morning making an incredible amount of sense. But, on foreign policy, Rand Paul has been saying, the leader in this for a long time, that we have been doing the same thing for a very long time, and there really hasn't ever been anyone to pump the brakes, foreign policy-wise, militarily speaking, nation building, that sort of thing. There's never anyone really that's been, a moment of self-reflection. Hey, let's pump the brakes. Are we making things more stable in the Middle East or less stable? See, that's a question that nobody even really wants to ask because I think they're afraid of what the answer is. Okay? Again, my foreign policy would be we will come there, we will surveil you, we will bomb you back to the Stone Age and fly home. Right? We're in planes, very, very fast planes. Okay? But that's just me. Again, I'm just a civilian. You know, I'm just a civilian with a microphone. But to me, and it seems like there are some people that agree with that sentiment. Right? I do think that's what President Trump wants to do. And I also, again, think that if Hillary Clinton were president, we would have been at war in Syria right now, if not more places. And keep in mind, it was Barack Obama that almost bombed Damascus and sent troops in, you know, after his phony red line over the gas. So something to think about. Yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. This all happens in the same week. We have the intelligence officials who, by the way, now the president says they're on the same page. And the president is saying on Twitter that, you know, after meeting with the intelligence officials, they believe their explanations were taken out of context. You know, the ones that CNN and others ran with to try to make the president look bad. I mean, it never ends. It never ends. Now, that being said, you can have Republican senators in D.C. that really, truly believe we should still be in Syria and Afghanistan and, you know, respectfully disagree. But the hawkish, the war hawk Republicans, they certainly are weary of pulling out of Syria and Afghanistan because this has never been done before in their lifetimes. To actually have something, it's been talked about, it's been dismissed, but to have a president to actually do. And the media and the leftists, they all hate Trump so much that they're not even willing to say that they really actually agree with him here. I mean, how many of these Code Pink, New York Times people have wanted to de-escalate and bring the troops home for years over this past 17 years? It used to be the hip thing to do. It was the counterculture. Bring the troops home. We're liberals. We're progressives. Bring the troops home. And now that the president's doing it, he's getting no support from these groups because they just can't stand the man. To try to put President Trump and his policies in a box it's becoming harder and harder to do. When it comes to predict whether it's going to be a typical Republican thing or a typical Democrat thing, it's really like he's a 1950s Democrat. Honestly, it really is like he's in a way. I mean, to me, that's what it feels like. You know, when it comes to some of his policies that now his negotiating is obviously unique to only him. But anyway. It's pretty incredible times that we're living in here. Very exciting times. It's exciting to see somebody personally just to shake things up. And when you have both parties that scream loudly for different reasons, I'm such a cynic, it's hard not to believe that that's not good for the American people. I don't know about you. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Back in a moment.
President Pitzer, Mr. Vice President, Governor, Congressman Thomas, Senator Wiley and Congressman Miller, Mr. Webb, Mr. Bell, scientists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your President having made me an honorary visiting professor, and I will assure you that my first lecture will be very brief. I am delighted to be here, and I'm particularly delighted to be here on this occasion. We meet at a college noted for knowledge, in a city noted for progress, in a state noted for strength, and we stand in need of all three. For we meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. Despite the striking fact that most of the scientists that the world has ever known are alive and working today, despite the fact that this nation's own scientific manpower is doubling every 12 years in a rate of growth more than 3 times that of our population as a whole. Despite that, the vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension. No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. But condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but a half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity began less than 2 years ago. The printing press came this year. And then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power. Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Only last week did we develop penicillin and television and nuclear power. And now, if America's new spacecraft succeeds in reaching Venus, we will have literally reached the stars before midnight tonight. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace
All right, so
cannot
welcome back
help
to the program. Now, some people
create new
some
ills.
people misunderstand me. On Facebook, Bobby writing, Russia, whose side was Russia on? Are you under the impression that anyone on the planet can trust Putin? Should we emulate Putin? Bobby, no, I don't think Russia is benign, not at all, in no way, shape, or form. I'm simply making the point that I think peace is better. I think the pursuit of peace is better. And the media wants everyone to think Russia is the boogeyman when China is a much graver threat to us. But you don't hear of anything about China, do you, Bobby? No, instead, everyone turns a blind eye when, for example, the state of Arkansas strikes deals with the communist Chinese, and we're going to give them our money, give them our resources, let them come here, build factories, and send the profits back home to support communist China. They're the ones economically that are even, that can kind of hold a candle next to us and have a 100-year plan to supplant us as the world's superpower. So I just see things a little differently when it comes to, the geopolitical stage. I don't think China is benign in their intentions. I don't think that Russia is benign or, somebody to not take seriously. But at the same time, I would like the United States to look out for their interests when it is appropriate. But I also would like peace. Isn't that something? I thought that's something the left used to always want, right? I want peace through strength. Absolutely. I think that's exactly what President Trump is trying to achieve. But I know there's other opinions. But, somebody said, Gene on Facebook wrote, is Afghanistan worth even one American life? I think these are questions that nobody even asks anymore, Gene. That's a good question. Is Afghanistan worth one American's life? Anyway, a lot of people, this Facebook thread kind of blowing up here, so I appreciate you guys for participating in the conversation. I'm happy to provide this medium here for us to do this, and you guys can get involved in the conversation if you'd like over at facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. Appreciate your input. We got more news to get to. There is a gun permitting bill that we'll talk about a little later. Probably talk about that next, as well as some other Arkansas news. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
As it dispels old, new ignorance, new problems, new dangers. Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. But this city of Houston, this state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. This country was conquered by those who move forward, and so will space. William Bradford, speaking in 1630 of the founding of the Plymouth Bay Colony, said that all great and honorable actions are accompanied with great difficulties, and both must be enterprised and overcome with answerable courage. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. And it is one of the great adventures of all time. And no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space. Those who came before us made certain that this country rode the first waves of the Industrial Revolution, the first waves of modern invention, and the first wave of nuclear power. And this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it. For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon and to the planets beyond. And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not see space filled with weapons of mass destruction, but with instruments of knowledge and understanding. Yet the vows of this nation can only be fulfilled if we in this nation are first, and therefore we intend to be first. In short, our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men, and to become the world's leading spacefaring nation. We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For space science, like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man. And only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war. I do not say that we should or will go unprotected against the hostile misuse of space any more than we go unprotected against the hostile use of land or sea. But I do say that space can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours.
So, did you guys hear former President Bill Clinton is coming back to Arkansas? He's going to speak at Arkansas State University. He came when I was going to A-State. I'm pretty sure Bill Clinton came and spoke. Oh, really? Was he there even before then? Yeah, George Jared writing, the youngest governor in the United States at the time, knew he'd made several tactical errors during his first term. It wasn't a surprise when Democrat Bill Clinton was ousted by Republican Frank White during his next election. The 34-year-old didn't give up. He spent the next 2 years traveling the state of Arkansas, asking voters to forgive him. So, of course, we know that. We remember all that. My question is, this is a Riceland series. I wonder how much he's getting paid for this. I'm under the impression that the Clintons need money. How about you? You under the impression that the Clintons need money? I am. So, anyway, he's former President Clinton is coming back to Arkansas to give some sort of speech, some sort of talk, as a part of the Riceland series. So you can get tickets. Are they free? Hang on. Tickets may be requested online. With the ticket portal opening on Monday, February 4th, students, faculty, and staff will be asked to verify themselves as members of the ASU community. Number of seats will be available to the general public through the portal on a first-come, first-served basis. Only one seat per person may be requested. So, anyway. Yeah, I mean, the Clinton Foundation. Hey, do you remember, was it Dan Perkins that we had on? And Dan was talking about how he, during his research in the Clinton Foundation, he said there wasn't actually one Clinton Foundation. It wasn't one Clinton. There were actually several Clinton Foundations scattered throughout the globe in different countries. And, of course, I mean, there's no word whether or not when Bill Clinton comes back to Arkansas to give this speech, no word as to whether or not he's going, to explain the speaking fees that he was given, these massive fees that he was given that essentially the rumors are it was a way to buy access with the Department of State when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And then, of course, we've got the whole Uranium One situation, and you got Peter Schweitzer's book called Clinton Cash. That's all pretty interesting as well. There's also, the video about Bill talking about how Hillary Clinton communes with Eleanor Roosevelt. So, pretty interesting situation we got going on here. And I will tell you that knowing that Bill Clinton came from Arkansas's Marble Palace and used this state to catapult himself to arguably one of the most powerful political families in the world. And we won Clinton in the White House because of Arkansas. Almost two Clintons coming from our own backyard. I mean, does anyone wonder why we have had such a hard time in the state of Arkansas moving that pendulum back to the right, from how left it was? Does anyone wonder why it's so hard to get a hold of our local government? And it's because the bureaucracies and institutions down there are pretty much operating the same way they were under President Clinton. So that's why I actually do have some hope, by the way, for this governmental reorganization effort that Asa Hutchinson is now attempting to do. We'll see. They throw out numbers like $15 million in savings, but then they have no math to back it up. I mean, that doesn't make me super excited, but, certainly there does need to be some change. Is it an actual, is it actual shrinking the size of government? We'll wait and see. Or is it just centralizing the government? That's been some of the criticism, but anyway. Former President Bill Clinton to speak at Arkansas State University. What else do we have here? Oh, yeah. Okay, let's get to this. Speaking of Arkansas, there was a bill that caught my attention. I think it was filed yesterday. Senate Bill 223. Joe, you don't have this because I just pulled this up. Excuse me. Senate Bill 223 is by Senator Trent Garner. It caught my attention because I saw this post that the Patriots of X746's Tim Loggins made, But let's read this bill, shall we? Senate Bill 223, an act permitting a victim of domestic abuse to apply for and receive an expedited and temporary license to carry a concealed handgun and for other purposes. So that sounds like certainly a very noble intention. That if you have a woman who has been the victim of domestic abuse, she's been shoved around, she's been hit, she's been abused, that there would be a way to expedite for her to get a temporary concealed carry license so that she can protect herself or maybe protect her family from said abuser. There's only one problem that I see, and that's we don't need permits in Arkansas to carry a weapon, open or concealed. And there's a court case, Taft versus Arkansas, that proves it. There's also the law that is very clear. And so when I first saw this, I thought, well, the intent on this is good. I mean, right? But wouldn't it be better to pass a resolution telling battered women that they don't need a permit to carry a gun right now, open or concealed? Like, to me, instead of passing a law that is going to make women go it's going to, at least they're going to be confused, I would think. You now have to go and, you can go get a gun right now and protect yourself. If we're really talking about the safety of a woman here, we need our politicians to acknowledge that Act 746 decriminalized the possession of a weapon. And the only way you get convicted of possession of a weapon in Arkansas now is if they can prove that you were going to do something unlawful with it against another person. It's a very high standard, very high burden of proof on the state. So the state of our gun laws are pretty simple. There's no law that says that you are allowed to drink sweet tea on your porch, but there's no law that says you can't, so you are perfectly free to do so. That's what our gun laws are right now, thanks to a 2013 law that the establishment and people in government, the bureaucracies, Arkansas State Police don't want to acknowledge because of money, because of the people that think they need this permit. Now, keep in mind that the way I read this bill by Senator Gardner, this bill would only be a temporary permit until you get a full-blown permit. Well, the temporary permit would not be reciprocal with other states, okay? Just something that I'm assuming here. But the bottom line is this. The best thing that you could do, instead of having to try to pass this bill about a temporary license for victims of domestic abuse, you don't need a license now. So the intention is noble, but I believe that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state. It's not just me. The Patriots of Act 746 have been saying this for 5 years. We have a judge last October that ruled, and it's now in dicta, it's in case law, that this is the state of Arkansas's gun laws. And so the best thing you can do for a victim of domestic violence is to tell them that they can go get a gun and carry it and feel confident that they are not breaking the law, that it is their constitutional right to do so because we're a constitutional carry state. You may carry open, you may carry concealed without a permit inside the state of Arkansas. Now, folks, that is freedom. That is freedom, even to say it, right? Even to say it, people. You wouldn't believe the times that we have the Patriots on and the times that we interview and we talk about this. I'll get text messages from my friends that they don't listen to the show 2 hours a day because they don't really love me. Now, I get text messages from my friends and they're like, "Are you serious? You serious about that, Clark? Are you serious?" Like, that's real. And so people are finding out every single day, and they don't. They tend to even not even believe it, because everybody's so terrified of guns. Oh my gosh, the guns are these floating sentient beings, that decide who to kill and who not to kill, and it's absolves all human beings of responsibility because these guns they can move around and they float around and They're like sharks. No, they're tools. Guns are just tools, and it's a human heart that can use them in a way that is tragic. So anyway, here's what Tim Logan said. I saw this on Facebook. This is This post got me thinking. Senator Trent Gardner has introduced SB 223 that says victims of domestic abuse can qualify for a handgun permit without waiting for the background check. This sounds good until you remember no permit is needed in Arkansas to carry a concealed handgun. This bill continues the manufactured confusion some generate by saying a permit is required when the law is clear that no permit is needed. It's time to end the charade. Act 746 of 2013 decriminalized the possession of a weapon. Taft versus Arkansas gave case law and precedent that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state. Call your senator and tell them we request a no vote on SB 223. It's not needed and could mislead a battered woman into believing she needs a permit in Arkansas to carry a weapon to defend herself. Now think about that. It could mislead a battered woman. Right now, if there are battered women out there listening, the law says that you don't have to have a permit to carry a weapon concealed, or the Taft decision confirms it. Right? There are some law enforcement officers that have attempted to arrest people, full disclosure, and then the prosecutors drop the charges because they realize that there's no way they can get a conviction. So, and there are people that are out in Arkansas open carrying every day without a permit. There are people out in Arkansas concealed carrying every day without a permit. So, the best use of a permit is if you need to travel to another state. That's the best use. And Arkansas still provides that service, but they need to market themselves as such. They need to market themselves. The Arkansas State Police need to serve the public by telling them the truth and then offering them a valuable service. And it is a valuable service. And I'm happy to pay. I'm happy to pay for a permit. Me personally, I'm happy to give my money to the state of Arkansas to pay for a permit so that I am legal in Mississippi or Florida or wherever I want to go with states that have reciprocal agreements with us. Okay? So I'm happy to do that. That's how they should market themselves in light of the fact that we now no longer need a permit when we're in the state. Just my 2 cents. Tell me what you think about Senator Trent Gardner's bill. Let's see here. Some people are saying indoctrination works. What else do we have here? Now, some people still talking about the armchair warhawks. Let's see here. Mark on Facebook writing, the social conditioning in the last 50 years are hard to override when it comes to guns. That's a good point. Yep. A lot of people, Mark is hitting on something that many people miss out. They don't really stop and think about when it comes to the relationship between a citizen and the government, and that is the psychological operations that take place, whether intentional or just something that happens in the subconscious. The fact of the matter is, first of all, in Arkansas, when it comes to guns in Arkansas's case, like we were just conditioned sometime back in the 90s to believe that you had to have a permit, that the Arkansas Constitution doesn't matter, and you have to have a permit to carry. We were all conditioned because we looked at guns. We said, well, if you don't have a permission slip from the government to carry a weapon, somehow they got us to believe that if you don't have a permission slip from the government to carry a weapon in Arkansas, that you're an irresponsible person. And they did this based on fear of irresponsible people. They did this based on fear of even seeing a gun in public. You know what I mean? And so psychologically, we have this over time. People get used to it. People are born and they're raised in Arkansas where they know nothing different than needing a permission slip to exercise your constitutional Second Amendment right. It's the same way now. How many years has it been since 9/11? So we have adults now who have grown up with a TSA where it is perfectly fine for the TSA and the government to stick their hands down your pants to see if you've got a bomb or something. What a relationship between authority and citizen. How far will the next generation let them go? Because it's not that much further than what they're used to. It's certainly a lot further than what I'm used to. I grew up when you went through airport security and they didn't believe it or not, they didn't look at you naked and they didn't put your hands down your pants. And I'm only 34 years old and I remember that. I mean, I'm old, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, we're going to take a break here on this Johnny Cash Friday. We've got more news coming your way, so don't go anywhere. Thanks for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Back in a moment.
There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. It is for these reasons that I regard the decision last year to shift our efforts in space from low to high gear as among the most important decisions that will be made during my incumbency in the office of the
firearms manufacturer Omega
in the last
are making
24
clones of the
hours,
most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
We have seen facilities now being created for the greatest and most complex exploration in man's history. We have felt the ground shake and the air shattered by the testing of a Saturn C-1 booster rocket, many times as powerful as the Atlas which launched John Glenn, generating power equivalents to 10,000 automobiles with their accelerator on the floor. We have seen the site where 5 F-1 rocket engines, each one as powerful as all 8 engines of the Saturn combined, will be clustered together to make the advanced Saturn missile, assembled in a new building to be built at Cape Canaveral, as tall as a 48-story structure, as wide as a city block, and as long as 2 lengths of this field. Within these last 19 months, at least 45 satellites have circled the Earth. Some 40 of them were made in the United States of America, and they were far more sophisticated and supplied far more knowledge to the people of the world than those of the Soviet Union. The Mariner spacecraft now on its way to Venus is the most intricate instrument in the history of space science. The accuracy of that shot is comparable to firing a missile from Cape Canaveral and dropping it in this stadium between the 40-yard lines. Transit satellites are helping our ships at sea to steer a safer course. Tireless satellites have given us unprecedented warnings of hurricanes and storms, and will do the same for forest fires and icebergs. We have had our failures, but so have others, even if they do not admit them, and they may be less public. To be sure, we are behind, and will be behind for some time in manned flight. But we do not intend to stay behind, and in this decade we shall make up and move ahead. The growth of our science and education will be enriched by new knowledge of our universe and environment, by new techniques of learning and mapping and observation, by new tools and computers for industry, medicine, and the home as well as the school. Technical institutions such as Rice will reap the harvest of these gains. And finally, the space effort itself, while still in its infancy, has already created a great number of new companies and tens and thousands of new jobs. Space and related industries are generating new demands in investment and skilled personnel, and this city and this state and this region will share greatly in this growth. What was once the furthest outpost on the old frontier of the West will be the furthest outpost on the new frontier of science and space. Houston, your city of Houston, with its manned spacecraft center, will become the heart of a large scientific and engineering community.
All right, yesterday
during the next 5 years,
the Arkansas General Assembly breast milk student loan legislation passes the House Public Health Committee. The Arkansas House Public Health, Welfare, and Labor Committee passed legislation allowing rulemaking authority for the Department of Health for breast milk banks, which we have no breast milk banks in the state, but Arkansas hospitals get their breast milk from banks in Texas mostly. But this was an attempt that if there ever is a breast milk bank that wants to come here, nonprofit or for-profit, that there would be some sort of standard set. That's by Representative Aaron Pilkington. Then there was another bill that passed by State Representative Austin McCullum that would prevent licensing boards from revoking licenses based on a student loan debt, meaning in some states, if you fall behind on your student loan payments, your licensing board will yank your license. Austin McCullum wants to get out ahead of that and make sure that the licensing boards here are not allowed to do that. One more hour coming your way next.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
New demands in investment and skilled personnel, and this city and this state and this region will share greatly in this growth. What was once the furthest outpost on the old frontier of the West will be the furthest outpost on the new frontier of science and space. Houston, your city of Houston, with its manned spacecraft center, will become the heart of a large scientific and engineering community. During the next 5 years, the National Aeronautic and Space Administration expects to double the number of scientists and engineers in this area, to increase its outlays for salaries and expenses to $60 million a year, to invest some $200 million in plant and laboratory facilities, and to direct or contract for new space efforts over $1 billion from this center in this city. To be sure, all this costs us all a good deal of money. This year's space budget is 3 times what it was in January 1961, and it is greater than the space budget of the previous 8 years combined. That budget now stands at $5.4 billion a year, a staggering sum, though somewhat less than we pay for cigarettes and cigars every year. Space expenditures will soon rise some more, from 40 cents per person per week to more than 50 cents a week for every man, woman, and child in the United States. For we have given this program a high national priority, even though I realize that this is, in some measure, an act of faith and vision, for we do not now know what benefits await us. But if I were to say, my fellow citizens, that we shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival, on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold. I'm the one who's doing all the work, so we just want you to stay cool for a minute. However, I think we're going to do it. And I think that we must pay what needs to be paid. I don't think we ought to waste any money, but I think we ought to do the job. And this will be done in the decade of the 60s. It may be done while some of you are still here at school at this college and university. It will be done during the terms of office of some of the people who sit here on this platform. But it will be done. And it will be done before the end of this decade. And I am delighted that this university is playing a part in putting a man on the moon as part of a great national effort of the United States of America. Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being with us. This is hour number 2. We're going to get to some Johnny Cash music here in just a moment. So stick with us for that. Hey, did anybody see Tucker Carlson the other night? I'm sure the answer is yes. I think this is really a bold move. Tucker Carlson saying that Congress should ban smartphones for kids. You know, it's an interesting idea. Let me just say that. It'd be much easier if parents would just do this, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be way easier than Congress getting involved? Quote, it's not surprising then rates of mental illness and suicide among teens began to surge right around 2012. That's just as smartphones and social media became universal. You probably didn't need a study to know all of this. If you are a parent, it's obvious. Smartphone use makes your kids sadder, slower, and more isolated, and over time can kill them, Carlson said. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Most parents will do nothing, not because they don't want what's best for their kids. They do, but because in real life, it's just too difficult. Try taking an iPhone away from a 7th grader. You learn a lot about what addiction means. It's like trying to get a junkie into rehab. You cannot do it alone. Parents need help, he went on, and there is no reason that the Congress, which made smartphones possible in the first place, shouldn't be part of the solution. So here's an idea. Ban smartphone use for children. Pass a federal law tomorrow, he said. Why wouldn't we do that? An addictive product that science has determined gravely harms kids. Sound familiar? Once upon a time, people actually argued against age limits for cigarette sales. It's hard to remember exactly what their arguments were. They seem so mindless and embarrassing now. This is actually really a big deal. Will the government get involved? I don't know. There's a lot of money in Silicon Valley selling these phones to our kids, okay? And it's such a weird thing because it's a mental and psychological addiction problem. It's not something that's physical, like drugs, like alcohol, like tobacco. You know what I mean? And so this is kind of a little bit more nuanced for people to understand. But did anybody ever see Batman Forever, that terrible movie with Jim Carrey? Do you remember the Val Kilmer? You remember that? Kilmer, whatever. So the main plot of that was the Riddler, played by Jim Carrey, had this device that went on your TV and like basically hypnotized you and made you into kind of like a zombie, and he was also able to record or hear your thoughts or whatever, and take information in. Isn't that exactly what cell phones are doing to people? And if you try to take them away, myself included, I hate this thing. I have said this many times. I'm going to continue talking about this because am I the only one? I don't like my cell phone. I really don't. I don't like the constant communication. I don't like, now me being a news junkie, maybe it's different. I do feel compelled to constantly look at the headlines and things like that. And I have to make myself put it down. It is an exercise in discipline. I tell myself that this is just something that I have to do. Discipline myself. Okay, phone is now down. It is gone. It's not, it's nowhere. I actually, when I charge it now at night, most nights, I charge it in a completely different room in the house so that when I, first of all, go to sleep, the last thing I see is not my cell phone. And when I wake up, the first thing I see is not my cell phone. Now, that's just what I'm attempting to do because there's just something, we don't really know the social ramifications of this much screen time. You know what I'm saying? And it bothers me that, even my daughter, she's 18, 19 months old, we don't let her have our cell phones. But, she'll pick them up and she knows. She just start to move her finger and she's trying to, she's manipulating the phone in some way. She doesn't know what she's doing, but you know what I mean? I'm just like, give me that. I don't even want her around it. We have these Silicon Valley tech people that won't even let their kids have these cell phones because they know how bad they are for them, for their development, right? So it's, people used to say the same thing about too much TV, right? Don't use TV as a babysitter, that sort of thing. And yeah, to an extent, yeah, but what's going on with the phones and the screen so close to your face, what is that doing to your vision long term, nearsighted, farsighted? I mean, what is this doing to our kids? And so Tucker Carlson is right to at least bring this up. I don't know if Congress should get involved, though, but I do think that parents certainly need to be aware. And you know what? If it's hard to take it away from the child now, just know that the longer you wait, the harder it would be. It's certainly something that needs to be regulated. And to the point, when I was growing up, very few kids had ADD. And now it's not even ADD, right? Now it's ADHD. Now, there were a few kids. Are they combined now? Okay, so they've merged the acronyms. Okay, so anyway, it doesn't matter. The very few kids had ADD, and I feel like that's on the uptick. I feel like now everybody has ADD, right? Now, some of that's because we've cut out recess, and there are, little boys that just really just need to go out and run around or whatever, go. Sorry, I just had a mental image of a memory. Anyway, I don't want to get distracted. So, if the cell phones are contributing to this socially awkward behavior, an antisocial behavior, quite frankly, an isolation, if you will, I just want you guys to think about something. If this continues and it's not regulated, and we essentially have people who are obviously not actual zombies, but let's just go ahead and use the word, right? A simpler word. So 30, 40 years from now, we've got these kids who are zombies. They're now adults. Can you imagine what a valuable skill communication would be? Meaning somebody who can actually get their attention and communicate the old-fashioned way, face-to-face with words. Or somebody that can sell them something face-to-face. I contend that 25, 30 years from now, if things continue to go the way they are, the most valuable skill you can have will be to communicate with somebody verbally and effectively and be able to convince them of things. Because I think we're going to have an entire society of people, this is just my personal opinion, an entire society of people that don't know how to do that one thing. Because they are isolated and there's no need to really know how to verbally communicate. Just something to think about. That story just jumped right out at me this morning. That Tucker Carlson, again, is calling for Congress to ban smartphones for kids. To ban smartphones for children. Okay, let's move on now. Spilt milk. No, we were telling you about the new rules for potential breast milk banks if they come to Arkansas. But is this courtesy of Conduit for Action? What is this? Yeah, courtesy of Conduit for Action. Spilt milk and the homestead property tax credit. Representative Johnny Rye filed HB 1034 to increase the homestead property tax credit, which applies against a homeowner's property taxes. State law now provides for an annual credit of $350. Rye's bill would increase the credit to $375. The extra $25 would be a good thing for homeowners. It is about the equivalent of being able to buy about an extra 8 gallons of milk in a year. Here is something you probably don't know. The amount of the increase could have been much higher if the legislature had not messed with the Property Tax Relief Trust Fund over the years. For example, in 2005, the legislature authorized the transfer of over $40 million out of the trust fund to general spending. In 2016, one of the trust fund's sources of income was taken away and is now used for highway spending. If Rye's bill passes, your credit will increase by $25. If the legislature had never messed with the Property Tax Relief Trust Fund, well, they will tell you no sense crying over spilled milk. But you better keep an eye on future moves to raid the fund. By the way, the money is not free money. Counties are reimbursed for the loss of revenue from the Property Tax Relief Trust Fund, and the fund is supported from a portion of other taxes you pay. Interesting little piece, spilt milk in the homestead property tax credit. That's up right now at conduitnews.com, as well as the news about what passed out of the Public Health Committee yesterday on breast milk, believe it or not, and student loan legislation. So you can check those out for yourself. In other news, where's my Arkansas Gazette piece here? This was interesting. The Arkansas Supreme Court are saying that the city of Fayetteville cannot apply its discrimination law, quote, discrimination law, on gender bias. They're saying the measure violates a state law. This is a state law, I think, back from 2015. That was an effort to regulate what cities and counties can do when it comes to anti-discrimination laws, meaning we don't want, for the sake of the economy, we don't want Fayetteville or Washington County to have one set of rules about what discrimination is, and then somebody else that has, if you've got people that get multiple businesses across the state, now they have to comply with these different ordinances that, we need a uniform statewide code as to what is discriminatory and what's not. Of course, this is on the LGBT, RSTLNE, would you like to buy Val communities agenda. That's where this is coming from, because, it is illegal to discriminate against somebody in Arkansas based on their gender, meaning you're a woman, okay? Well, they want to make it illegal to discriminate against someone based on their gender identity, which is literally, as we've seen, how many genders are there now, Joe? What is it? Are they now saying it's infinite? Unquantifiable. Okay, so sue somebody for any reason for, essentially, have you seen these videos of these people? It's ma'am. It's ma'am. No, it's ma'am. You have to call me ma'am. I'm a man. I'm sorry. I'm a woman. I'm not a man. You better call me ma'am. Sorry, sir. Don't call me sir. Sorry, man. Have you seen this? You better call me ma'am. You better call me ma'am. I'm a missus. If you don't like it, I'll just step outside and I'll show you what it's like, sir. Because I'm a woman, and women love to challenge people to fights for trivial things. All right. So anyway, my apologies. I got carried away there. So the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled the city can't enforce an ordinance banning discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, saying it's already ruled the measure violates state law. You had a Washington County judge saying that Fayetteville could enforce an, quote, anti-discrimination ordinance while the city challenged the constitutionality. The Arkansas Supreme Court reversed that lower judge's decision. What this has to do is, in Arkansas law, your civil rights, okay? Civil rights law says you cannot discriminate based on race, religion, gender, national origin, or disability. But nowhere in there does state law say sexual orientation or gender identity apply? So the LGBT, RSTL, NE, would you like to buy Val community? Travis Story, the attorney for the anti-ordinance group Protect Fayetteville, said the ruling should be an end to the issue. He said, quoted as saying in the Gazette, quote, "From our perspective, this is kind of the final resolution of the ordinance issue. They ruled that it was void and that Act 137 basically preempts it. So from our point of view, this is really it. I think we always knew this is the right result. It just took a very long time and a lot of patience to get here." I believe, by the way, Act 137 was sponsored by Senator Bart Hester, and it was a way to, I really think, be forward-thinking as to what we're facing. But it was also, hear me, a way for religious organizations to be protected, or that's the way I see it. Because, see, I think these ordinances about sexual orientation or gender identity or fluidity or whatever, the fear was, and it's a legitimate one, that these ordinances were going to be used by local governments to essentially attack churches. That these ordinances were going to be used to say, are you a church? Do you open up your facility to anybody in the public for free? And if the answer was yes, and there are a lot of churches that do allow their facilities to be used by the public for free, well, then now all of a sudden you're going to have these, staged lawsuits in order to attack the Christian right about, okay, well, I identify as a woman, but I'm really a man, and I'm going to go into this bathroom, and you have to let me do it. The church says no, and now, boom, you're in violation of the, Fayetteville anti-discrimination ordinances. Please do not think that that's not exactly what was going to happen here. We're not stupid at this point. The argument of a slippery slope is now verified. It is 100% real and verified. All those people that said, gay marriage is a slippery slope, we're undoing bedrock principles of our society, and people said, what are you talking about? It's not a slippery slope. Clearly, gender is now unquantifiable according to the left. Clearly it is. We have people that want to use bathrooms when they're not, we have people denying biological sex. They suffer from gender dysphoria, and people don't want to think that that is a psychological disorder, and instead they want to say, no, you get to define your own reality. Clearly, we have gone a long way from just letting two guys get married. It's so much. We're so much further than we ever. I think that's probably what it was. When people said it was a slippery slope, I don't think anybody ever dreamed what the path was for the slippery slope. You know what I mean? Like, you never dream, like, wait a second, wait, what? There are people who self-identify as, as questioning and whatever, and it's to the point now where LGBT doesn't even make any sense. The acronym doesn't even make any sense, because you have all those other acronyms that are I'm non-binary, but one of the B's in LGBT stands for bisexual, meaning binary. Well, they're affirming that that there are two sexes. But now there's not two sexes. There's more than that, based on how you feel. So I guess my point is this. Everybody out there, when it comes to ordinances like Fayetteville was trying to put out there, I know there are members of the LGBT community that would say, no, we don't want to do that. No, that's not at all. We don't want to. We're not going to force ourselves on churches just so we can get them, just so we can sue them and persecute them. Well, you might, but at this point, the slippery slope thing is real, and it absolutely would happen. There's a reason why you have people continuing to go to the cake baker after he's been acquitted. You have people continuing to go there, asking for a service they know he won't provide according to his conscience, just so they can make his life a hell. Because this is no longer about my freedom ends where yours begins, or live and let live. If you want to be gay, we're in America. You can go be gay. Go live the lifestyle you want. I don't have to affirm it, though. We have people that want their lifestyles heartily approved of. It is a totalitarian way of thinking. And Yeah, and that is a natural thing. I mean, a lot of human beings do want to be approved of. There's no question of that. But things have just gotten completely out of control. It's unrecognizable. We have the left now openly admitting that abortion is okay after the baby is out of the womb. We'll tell you more about that when we come back.
The President's address to the nation from his office in the White House, January 17, 1961.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. First, I should like to express my gratitude to the radio and television networks for the opportunities they have given me over the years to bring reports and messages to our nation. My special thanks go to them for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. 3 days from now, after half a century in the service of our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office as, in traditional and solemn ceremony, the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. Like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who will labor with him Godspeed. I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on issues of great moment, the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of the nation. My own relations with the Congress, which began on a remote and tenuous basis when, long ago, a member of the Senate appointed me to West Point, have since ranged to the intimate during the war and immediate post-war period, and finally to the mutually interdependent during these past 8 years. In this final relationship, the Congress and the administration have, on most vital issues, cooperated well to serve the nation good rather than mere partisanship, and so have assured that the business of the nation should go forward. So my official relationship with the Congress ends in a feeling, on my part, of gratitude that we have been able to do so much together. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. 3 of these involved our own country. Despite these holocausts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and most productive nation in the world. Understandably proud of this preeminence, we yet realize that America's leadership and prestige
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. Did you hear about this? This is incredible to me. This is incredible to me. You know the Kathy Tran, okay, over in Virginia? Me and Josh Waters were talking about this yesterday. Delegate Kathy Tran submitted bill to save caterpillars on the same day as the late-stage abortion bill. Democratic Virginia delegate who's recently come under fire for sponsoring a bill in the Virginia House of Delegates that would allow the termination of a pregnancy up to 40 weeks old is also the chief patron of a bill that would protect the lives of fall cankerworms during certain months. That is absolutely incredible to me. We as a society have lost our minds. We want to protect animals and worms, the cankerworm, the moth, or whatever. But how disconnected do you have to be to stand up for? I mean, you talk about Romans 1, worshiping the creature instead of the creator, instead of recognizing being created as humans in the image of God. What a stark contrast. We're going to take a break. We got half an hour of the program left on this Johnny Cash Friday. Back in a moment.
not merely upon our unmatched material progress, riches, and military strength, but on how we use our power in the interest of world peace and human betterment. Throughout America's adventure in free government, our basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. To strive for less would be unworthy of a free and religious people. Any failure traceable to arrogance or our lack of comprehension or readiness to sacrifice would inflict upon us grievous hurt, both at home and abroad. Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration. To meet it successfully, there is call for not so much the emotional and transitory sacrifices of crisis, but rather those which enable us to carry forward steadily, surely, and without complaint, the burdens of a prolonged and complex struggle with liberty the stake. Only thus shall we remain, despite every provocation, on our charted course toward permanent peace and human betterment. Crises there will continue to be. In meeting them, whether foreign or domestic, great or small, there is a recurring temptation to feel that some spectacular and costly action could become the miraculous solution to all current difficulties. A huge increase in newer elements of our defenses, development of unrealistic programs to cure every ill in agriculture, a dramatic expansion in basic and applied research. These and many other possibilities, each possibly promising in itself, may be suggested as the only way to the road we wish to travel. But each proposal must be weighed in the light of a broader consideration, the need to maintain balance in and among national programs. Balance between the private and the public economy. Balance between the cost and hoped-for advantages. Balance between the clearly necessary and the comfortably desirable. Balance between our essential requirements as a nation and the duties imposed by the nation upon the individual. Balance between actions of the moment and the national welfare of the future. Good judgment seeks balance in progress. Lack of it eventually finds imbalance and frustration. The record of many decades stands as proof that our people and their government have, in the main, understood these truths and have responded to them well in the face of threat and stress. But threats, new in kind or degree, constantly arise. Of these I mention two only. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armament industry.
We're just telling you about the Arkansas Supreme Court laying the smackdown on Fayetteville and their, quote, anti-discrimination ordinances. Let's see here. Andy Davis for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette talks about something that we hit on over at Conduit News earlier. If former State Representative Nate Bell is now working as the interim director of the Arkansas Health Insurance Marketplace, And there has been a move being debated for the last 18 months as to whether or not the Arkansas health care insurance marketplace needs to be done away with and absorbed into the Department of Insurance. And so they put it on hold earlier in the week, even though I think Senator Jason Rapert didn't see why it needed to be put on hold, but it went ahead and passed the agency transfer, went ahead and passed a committee yesterday on this. Let's see here. It says here, the Gazette, Nate Bell was hired 4 days after the previous director, Angela Lothar, resigned to pursue new opportunities. And let's see here. Under the 2010 Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, such exchanges allow consumers to shop for coverage and apply for federal subsidies to help pay for it. Quotes Nate Bell saying, "It troubles me that we've got legislators that have repeatedly said we don't want to entrench Obamacare. We're not for Obamacare. But at the end of the day, what are they doing? They're looking at bringing Obamacare and entrenching it in state government." It's SB 113, sponsors Jason Rapert. He called the argument a tired old phrase from Bell's days of the past, saying this has nothing to do with the ACA. This has to do with the states handling the funds that we're operating. And Governor Asa Hutchinson supports SB 113. Now, this is why they want to do this. They say that right now the Arkansas health insurance, it's a dollars and cents game. And if these estimates are anywhere close to being right, I can understand why they would go through with this. Right now, the Arkansas health insurance marketplace, which we have actually highlighted many times, how autonomous they were, and number one, didn't need to be. The salaries of some of these executives are outrageous, but $2.6 million a year is how much the marketplace is spending. And according to Alan Kerr, the insurance commissioner of the state of Arkansas, their estimate saying if they absorb the marketplace into the insurance department, that they'll only spend $571,500 a year. So that's a pretty big savings instead of spending $2.6 million if we're to believe these estimates. And I always say if because you never know with government estimates. But I find the whole thing interesting. Because if you scroll down further in this article, you have Senator Ron Caldwell, who's the chairman of the Legislative Council Subcommittee, compared the marketplace in its current form to a carpenter hired to build a house who's no longer needed after the house is built. Quote, he says, "We have people there that really don't have much to do, and it's time to move forward," Ron Caldwell, Republican from Wynn, said. By the way, let me just say this about Senator Ron Caldwell. It is absolutely such a blessing that he is okay. He had an accident, I think, right before the session happened that was very serious. And so I just want to say I wish him the best. It's been good to get to talk to him. I think, he's going to be in a wheelchair for the next 3 months, but he is rolling around and he's doing fine and he's passing bills and chairing committees and doing all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell you this, I heard somebody told me that there might be a wheelchair race between the House and the Senate. I'm just telling you. I'm letting you know right now. I don't know if Ron knows, but I listen. I might have gone up to Josh Miller and said that I heard that Ron Caldwell thinks that he's faster in the wheelchair than Josh Miller. I might have gone up to him and said that, but it was an unverified source, and. The House and the Senate are always looking to at competition. I actually think the red coats and the brown/gold coats should have some sort of basketball game as well. The guys that monitor, keep everybody in the galleries calm. That's what I think should happen. But anyway, just little rumor. You never know. Maybe just get a photo or something. That'd be nice. All right. Telephone number 870-275-9799. So that pretty much wraps up what's happened so far in the Arkansas legislature this week. Next week, the governor's standalone tax cut proposal is supposed to run, or may run. Let me just say it may run on Monday, and it may not run. There may be some more there may be more conversations that we're not privy to, but who knows? We're going to see if it runs on Monday and see what happens. Moving on from that, though, and we'll keep you posted with all of that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about our culture and why we are where we are, okay? So I had this idea because I was lamenting. Earlier in the week. I was lamenting the fact that these people from Hollywood, who are actors and who are some of them very good, some of them not so good, but some of them very good at being able to pretend to be a character that was written for them, and they're pretty good and they're entertaining. And I like to go to the movies and I like to watch movies, so that's a good thing. But then they open their mouths and they want to spew politics, and they want somehow to use their platform to all of a sudden act like that middle America actually cares what they have to think about politics, and how, the leftists have so infiltrated the culture to a point where it is, they've done everything that John Wayne was worried about. And so that got me to thinking. I've got this article here, if it'll refresh for me. Hang on a second. Yeah, here it is. The Historical Truth Project. This was sent to me, and it really got me thinking. Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. Do you guys remember this? This was supposedly the evil blacklisting. The Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. This was back when we were afraid that communists were going to infiltrate our society and government and take over. Well, that was obviously crazy. These people were obviously nuts, right? John Wayne, Frank Sinatra, and others. I mean, listen to this. With the abrupt collapse of global communism in the late 1980s, much has been gleaned from the billions of pages which comprise the former Soviet Union's most secret state of secrets. Chief among them included the planned infiltration of Hollywood by Soviet agents, American communists, and their reliably useful idiots of American liberal artistic intelligentsia. Okay, so let's listen in 1973. Let's go to, okay, I believe it was the 1973 Academy Awards. Marlon Brando, the same thing. Academy Awards, same thing as Oscars. The 1973 Academy Awards. This is just like a flag posted for all of you. If you want to know part of the reason we are where we are today, it's because of the 1973 Academy Awards. Marlon Brando wins Best Actor for his performance in The Godfather and refuses to accept, and instead sends a Native American woman up there to... Does anyone remember this? I clearly don't, but it was news to me. Listen.
Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
This was the 1973. Right?
Accepting the award for Marlon Brando in The Godfather, Miss Shasheen Littlefeather.
Shasheen Littlefeather then walks up to the stage. Yeah, it was 1973. And you'll remember this. And she got booed and applauded.
Hello. My name is Shasheen Littlefeather.
Remember this?
I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards, that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry. Excuse me.
All right. We'll listen a little bit more.
And on television, in movie reruns, and also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
All right, stop.
I beg at this...
Okay, so this was the beginning of something, or maybe this was the culmination of stuff that happened. You know, there was all these people that were upset with the way Native Americans were portrayed. Now, people living in Northeast Arkansas who were watching the Academy Awards and watched Miss Littlefeather say that probably had no idea that that was the beginning of Arkansas State University having to change their names from the Indians to the Red Wolves. Think about this. It never even crossed their minds that this would happen. But that's part of it. That's part of the PC culture, right? And now the culture starts to shift. You hear some people actually had the spine out of the audience to boo. Boo, what are you doing? This is the Academy Awards. This is not for politics. It's probably what they were thinking. This is not the time to bring up the portrayal of Native Americans in movies. So let's go to a guy who probably knows a lot about the portrayal of Native Americans in movies. And this is not the same, this is in a different subject, but it's on the communist things. Listen, I know Marlon Brando was an empathetic guy. So, but here is, a year later, 1974, John Wayne being asked about communism and capitalism and this organization on the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. Listen to this.
I'd like to particularly ask you as well, because it's related to the film industry, about that period in your career in Hollywood when you were to the forefront of the people who were blacklisting the alleged communist members of...
well, that's not a true statement.
Well,
we were not blacklisting.
Well, you were...
They were blacklisting. We didn't name anybody. We stayed completely out of it and said, we are Americans. Anybody that wanted to join us was fine. We gave no names out to anybody at any time, ever.
But when you look back at that now, John, at this space of time, I mean, are you proud of what happened in Hollywood at that time?
I think it was probably a very necessary thing at the time, because the radical liberals were going to take over our business. And you wouldn't have had any pictures like that then.
No, but seriously, though, were they in a position? I mean, the people who got kicked out of Hollywood, surely they were.
Who were kicked out?
Well, the people.
Wait a minute. Tell me who was kicked out.
Well, the people who left Hollywood. I mean, let's take for example, Carl Foreman.
Yeah, Carl Foreman.
I mean, was Dalton Trumbo?
Dalton Trumbo.
Look what happened to Larry Parks.
Larry Parks admitted that he'd been a commie, and he went on working.
Well, he didn't work for some time. It had a very
well, he hadn't worked a hell of a lot before that, had he?
Well, no, but I mean,
no.
But I mean, these aren't people, surely, are they, who you would expect to take over the industry?
Well, at the time, it seemed rather serious, and they were getting themselves into a position where they could control who would do the writing.
But isn't it right that people of all shades of opinion should be able to make movies, whether they be extreme right-wing or extreme left-wing?
Definitely. Any time that is their opinion, fine. But the trouble there was that they were spouting by rote somebody else's way of life. And that's all right for those fellows over there. That's the way they want to live, but we don't have to have it in our country.
No, but you could say, of course, that
was our
point
of view.
Yes, but you could say that your point of view was reflecting the capitalist way of life, the American way of life.
Well, and I don't think that capitalist is such an unpopular word. You know, it's in 200 years we've taken a wilderness and build a factory that feeds the world, a farm that supplies the world, and a farm that feeds the world. And we've been doing our best to help everybody out that we can. So I think it's a pretty good way of living.
All right. So again, that was John Wayne in 1974. So 1973. I'm not suggesting that when Miss Littlefeather went to the Academy Awards and said that Marlon Brando's not going to accept his award for Best Actor, that was the beginning of political correctness, but it certainly was an early sign of political correctness. So you have political correctness along with progressive well, now we know what it is. It's Marxism, along with Marxists who are trying to get control of the writing in Hollywood. Now, you combine those two things, and you have a culture. You have, I mean, it goes hand in hand. You have, the speech police, and then you have people who are writing things that are essentially forcing a new altruism on the population, and that is one that is anti-capitalistic, and it is anti-traditional American values. Even in 1974, John Wayne is, he has to say, well, I don't believe capitalism is a bad word. I mean, we're having to do this in 1974, right? And then you combine that with the takeover of our educational institutions, the infiltration of our educational institutions, the university, where they teach kids that Marxism should work really well on a chalkboard. And then you combine that with the journalists who are convinced that the ends justify the means, that they are convinced that if they were to mislead people, it's just because middle America's too stupid, and they don't really understand that the Soviets actually had it right. And so I just thought, man, all of this kind of came to me over the last 7 days. I did not know. I'd never actually seen the 1973 Academy. By the way, that was back when people actually watched the Academy Awards. That really is not a thing anymore. But you talk about politics infiltrating the Academy Awards. I mean, compared to that, I mean, that's Mickey Mouse stuff back in '73 compared to what it is now, where it's just a constant Trump-hating, they just live in a bubble, you know? And yet we go see all their movies. You know, that's a whole nother discussion. And I'm just as guilty. I mean, you know, some of them make good movies. Of course, the ones that get considered for Academy Awards are ones that I've never seen. It's ridiculous. I never saw Shape of Water. I don't know. I don't want to see that movie. Was it about a fish man, a half fish person, or a merman or something? I didn't want to see that. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Yeah, a fish man falling in love with a woman? No, thank you. Is that what that movie's about? A fish man falling in love with a woman? No, they don't. Are you serious? You're telling they do in the movie?
It's not on screen. It's implied.
It's implied?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. Well, okay, and that won Best Picture. I didn't even know. How did I not? And it's because I don't watch it. Because I don't care. I don't watch the Academy Awards. Good grief. Unbelievable. All right. I got to take a break. Back in a minute.
American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone.
Firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our
I just want to say one more thing. And this is just me as somebody who is a lover of movies. Of course, I had a text message during the break. Hang on a second, I'll read it to you. The greatest generation and greatest movies era is over. Where are the leaders of liberty? Do they die with our parents? And by the way, that movie Organization for the Preservation of American Ideals disbanded in 1975. Today, this is what the movies are used for. Most of the movies are used to present a political ideology. So if you have an idea, I have an idea for a movie. Oh, okay, what political ideology are you trying to convey? And see, that's what's crazy. Our politics change with each year. Our opinions can change with each year. That's why the best movies are based on bedrock principles and archetypes based on morality and timeless stories that are, characters, good versus evil. That's why those are the best stories, because they mean something more. You're trying to convey something. You're trying to convey a truth. A political opinion is not necessarily truth. A political ideology, again, can change and not hold up to time based on how society, believes, because it's fluid, right? But if you make stories or you write stories or you tell stories based on much bigger themes, those are the movies that are the best. Those are the movies that stand the test of time. Those are the stories that we love. And Hollywood is... Joe was telling me a little bit more about The Shape of Water during the break. I had no idea. That is so ridiculous. I should have... Whatever, you two have seen it. Joe saying, I haven't actually seen it. I've just read about it. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the show. We're going to wrap up the week. We appreciate you guys listening. We're going to be back here Monday morning, 6:05, with continuing coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. You're going to want to go to Conduit News throughout the week and get updated on any new developments, and we'll catch you up tomorrow or on Monday at 6:05. Arkansas, thanks for listening. Be safe.